ideas, and then you see that their ideas aren't real ideas. They're just kind of just trying to get closer to you to see what your ideas are.
Could you give it in just simple bullet points, things to look out for all the creators out there who might be watching this? What are the things to look out for in your view, in terms of how to tell someone might be a little shady?
Right. Like if they can't look you in the eyes like directly, like this guy Mike Klein. I mean, he lived here in my house right now, like for almost 5 years.
Right.
After his parents died, we kind of kissed and made up, and then he started living with me again with my family, which was a big mistake. But I have a good heart, so I just let him back in, and my wife was like, "You sure? Sure? You sure?"
Should always listen to your wife.
I know. I should have.
Always.
Um,
So,
so yeah.
would you say anyone who starts asking you questions or asking you,
Questions, asking too many questions about your characters, going into interested details that go beyond the book that are not in the book. Uh, you know, Anyone that I mean, but the main one is like if they can't look you in the eye, or
right,
if they're constantly calling you and like occupying your time and space, like and trying to like isolate you from other people,
right,
other creators, and trying to like those are the people you gotta be careful of. Like they're vampires.
right?
You know,
One thing you did mention to me as well is that in terms of these ghostwriters, like that one guy, Mike, he was actually doing full books, and other people were getting
yes,
the credit on his books.
he would do full comic books and he would get no credit for it. He got paid because these ghostwriter finisher artists are getting paid more than the regular artists. And at one point here in this basement where he was living,
Right,
actually, he lived in the basement of my house. He had four guys coming in from Marvel, and they were just soaking it up. Like he'd get like tons of work. They're doing several books a week and just like cranking it out here.
wow,
You
wow,
know, just working on stuff. And
wow. And the sad thing is, from a fan perspective, I came across cloning and all that other stuff back in the '90s because I used to
mm,
work at a studio where actually Francis Manipool first started in Toronto.
mm-hmm.
Uh, Craig Wynn, who is the inker, I think he inked a friend of mine. He actually inked Captain Britain, and the main guy from the head studio. He had actually worked for Rob Liefeld, and I started to learn about some of the interesting things that go on behind the scenes in the comic book side.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who are actually doing a lot of the heavy lifting who aren't getting the credit.
Yeah.
It's very much, I don't want to sound extreme, but it's very much an intellectual plantation out
It
there.
is. It is, without a
And
doubt. And they don't want people to talk to each other. Like, even though Mike lived here for 5 years, he never introduced me to any of his artists. I'd see their cards in the driveway, or they'd pull up or pull out, but he never said, "Hey, this is this guy and this is this guy." Like, I had artists coming upstairs in my studio all the time, and he met them, but he was very like close to the vest. Like, oh, you can't see
right.
what we're working on type of projects.
Well, he was probably also worried that, you know, I imagine it's almost like, the guy that cheats on his wife for his girlfriend.
Right,
They're
right,
always very
right,
jealous and they think that, uh-oh, you might actually do that too as well. So
right,
I think it
right.
probably he was very guarded because he was afraid that his whole thing was very precarious. It could fall apart.
Right. I didn't want the guys to work with me because I worked with guys that used to work for DC and stuff like that, and they're producing things, here. Like, I worked with Paris Cullens, I've worked with Trevor Van Eden in the past when I lived in the Bronx. I worked with Gary Cohn. I worked with a lot of guys. I'm working right now with Tom Ahern and Tom Siaka. Tom Ahern worked for a lot of guys. He was a background artist for a lot of Marvel books, and he never got credit for. He was a ghost artist on the Marvel
Yeah.
books, and he used to, ghost for a lot of people too. So,
And it's a
I,
sad thing because how it's presented, thanks to the Wizard. Well, Wizard doesn't exist anymore.
right,
I mean, other than Wizard World,
right,
um, is that it's presented to the fans as though, okay, you have this artist, he's the superstar artist,
right,
and they do the work. And the
right.
reality is, and it's very funny because often I hear a lot of criticisms of Japanese artists because, they have that insane schedule. Oh,
Yeah,
well, they have a whole crew of people. Well,
they
guess
do.
what?
A lot of people. Yeah,
We have a whole lot of people over here too, and we're
right,
still not meeting the deadlines that we should be meeting,
right, right.
right?
They're less
So
disciplined.
it's discipline,
Yeah,
and it's very interesting once you see it on the other side. For myself, I still retain a lot of the fandom,
Right.
but not in the same way after learning a lot of things. So that's why I was asking you, how do you feel about that? Because for myself, I slowly, there's certain things that I'll read or I'll enjoy, but it tends to be from the past when it comes to Marvel and DC.
Oh yeah, from childhood, that's the best stuff that they ever put out.
Yeah,
Anything. I mean, Civil War was pretty good, but then what they did in the movie was nothing like the books.
right,
I mean, not even 10%. But I think they did that intentionally because they don't want to pay their creators. They
right.
don't want to pay their writers. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it's what they're doing is eventually it's sort of turning into this pile of mush where you're not
Right.
getting really good creative stuff, and everyone's wondering, um, what's going on? Why are sales down? People
Right.
will gravitate to creative things.
Right.
I know a lot of artists who complain about manga and anime, but you know what? There's some crazy creative stuff being pumped out of there because there's a certain
Oh
different way
yeah.
of working,
And the stories are unique.
very unique.
Yeah.
And with
Hmm.
the duopoly,
Hmm.
we are stifled by it. It's unfortunate. And then of course, then you have a distributorship like Diamond that is, how can I put it? It's a monopoly. It makes it really tough.
Right.
So, but it's interesting. So, in terms of any other things, in terms of worrying about these people who hang out with us and take our ideas, is there any other safeguard you would recommend?
Yeah. Make everyone sign a contract. Like an
Right,
NDA.
right,
You can't be like, hey, let's do this company and your friends. And it doesn't work.
yeah,
You know, it
yeah,
doesn't work. Just like my two former partners that were starting Bronx Heroes with me, they were like intentionally stressing me out and giving me a lot of stress, so that they were like kind of hoarding my attention and keeping me around. And I almost felt like I was like working for them instead of the other way around because it was my company,
right, right,
you know. And
right,
at one time when we first started the Bronx Heroes, I was living in the Bronx under one guy's roof. I was living in his house because his father passed away,
right,
and then I took over his house. He was living somewhere else. His mother was living somewhere else, but I was maintaining his home. And we said, well, we're going to turn this into a comic book studio. So we're like out on Elder Avenue in the Bronx. But then the guy would do like stuff like whenever we had arguments or in the meetings, because he never met a deadline, he never finished his drawings. He started doing things like turning off my heat. You know, and my son was just born in the winter. He's turning off the heat, trying to
right.
control me emotionally. Then he like the lights would go out, didn't pay the bill, things like that. And then like
Interesting.
so, whenever I would give him a demand and say, hey, you missed this deadline, he would retaliate by me and my family over
Wow,
by like tormenting us, in winter. Like, oh, I didn't pay the heating bills. Oh, dude, you're getting your rent on time,
wow, wow.
stuff like that,
Yeah,
and I had to get out of that situation because then I ended up in court with him, over
wow.
just not putting window guards for the kid. Like he wasn't doing his responsibility as a landlord or as a comic book artist. And then I found out that he was actually having his students because he was a teacher at this Catholic school, and he was like taking his students' art and then saying that it was his.
Oh Lord.
So he
Oh
wasn't
wow.
even an artist, he wasn't even, things like that.
Wow.
The other guy, Gary, was a good guy, but he was like playing the game. Like they were just basically trying to get me to give up the company to them, and then for me to quit. But I'm resilient, And then when the Marvel DC lawsuit came out, they're like, "Oh, we got to cut you off. We don't want to be with you. We're trying to get jobs at Marvel and DC. We don't want to be associated with you."
Right.
And then essentially, they were trying to evict me, and I went to court to fight
Right. It's interesting
that.
how freeing it is, though, once you decide. Like for myself, I decided many, 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 many moons ago that I was going to be part of DC or Marvel.
Right.
You know,
Same
and
here. I just,
and it's very
especially after the
freeing.
lawsuit.
A lot of people, I think, who are fans, their main dream is to be part of it, but don't realize how much that, at least for me, it holds you back. Because then once you realize, wow, I can create the stuff. Sure, maybe a lot of people are not going to see it, but I'm starting to actually stretch my creativity further than just like the typical stuff I grew up with. And there's a freedom in that that I think that is sort of, I think, I don't know, I wish more people experienced it. You know, it would allow us to have an actual industry. Um,
Right.
but that's just probably just my crazy brain thinking about that. Um, I wonder if you must have experienced that same similar freedom. I don't know, but did you experience that?
Yeah, I mean, we don't need them.
Yeah,
They're antiquated. They write the same. I mean, DC stuck on a one note of doing multiple Earths. That was like what their big hit in 85, 86. Of Crisis, and they're just stuck on Crisis. They can't go beyond that. Every year is a crisis. They're stuck with this other Earth stories and multiple Supermans and multiple Wonder Womans and multiple Batman. And the reason why they're doing that, in part, is that they can steal from other creators and see, oh, these creators have this thing that looks kind of like Batman or like Superman or like Wonder Woman. And they can rip off their designs and say, well, this is Superman or 515. It's like, and they can expand that so that you cannot do your own Bat superhero, or you can't do your own Superman, or you can't. And look what they do with Wildstorm. They bought Wildstorm for $2 million from Jim Lee, and then they buried it.
yeah. Wildcats is
Wildstorm,
gone.
when they bought it, was very, very successful. It was selling more than DC Comics.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I guess Jim Lee was just happy to unload it. It was just probably too much of a workload for him.
Yeah, it's a big responsibility. You know, he has a lot of
work.
kids. You know.
It's a lot of work.
You know, he's a family man. Yeah. I mean, and he got a sweet deal. I mean,
yeah, because he's editor
but
now.
you know,
Isn't he like
yeah, he's editor.
editor in chief?
He's the publisher. He's a publisher now,
Right.
head publisher.
So I can't.
So that's the
blame
thing
him in that
is
sense.
imagine you have a Saturday morning cartoon, you have a toy line, you have your own comic book industry. You know, really, he could have just continued doing that through Image. He didn't have to go to DC, but he did. And that for whatever his reasons are.
Yeah.
Good for him, you know. I mean, I use that as him and Todd McFarlane as examples of where I want to be with my company, you know.
I think we would all love to be able to get there, you know. I do think one thing. I think one thing we should learn is as creators to have sort of an alliance in the sense of it doesn't mean that we have to create together, but at least be able to say, hey, you see that guy over there, or you hear this, or you're hearing what's going on, and having an open channel of communication amongst all of us creators. So then it's kind of like being a school of fish, right?
Mm-hmm.
School of fish will move together, even though there isn't one main fish that leads them. And I think that, you know, we can all be independent and separate, but at the same time, when it need be, it's like, yeah, you know what? I'm not liking this. Hey, let me call up Ray. let's talk about what's going on. And I think that's what's sort of needed. But
and I think that Hollywood, in a sense, is similar with the writer's room, where you have like one writer used to write a movie, now you have a whole room writing. They'll take your draft and then they make it everyone's draft. It's not just yours. And to an extent, they're like, oh, this is much better than having the pressures of writing a whole movie or a TV show by yourself. But it also takes away your ownership.
Yes.
You know, and it also takes, you know, and you can't make claims like, hey, I did this or that, you know.
Yes.
And I think this is where the corporate model of where that's heading.
That's right.
But
there's also something
and they're selling to that.
And there's also something that misses from that. Then everyone complains, man, everything's kind of bland.
Right. Because everything looks like everything else.
There is, it's like the difference between getting something that's manufactured, okay, works beautifully, whatever, and getting something that's handcrafted like a Swiss watch.
Right. It's a much difference. And you're losing the individual. Imagine you're like Andy Warhol did that in the art world, you know? It's like the guy is dead, and then you have artwork that appeared of Superman that said 1965 or whatever, or 1960, and then the comic book collages that were supposedly done by Warhol were like from a later date comic book that wasn't even published on the date that's on there. You know, it's like it's like you could put out unlimited Warhols after his death because he never worked on his stuff anyway. He was like a Bob Kane Stanley of fine art world. You know, he made prints of his stuff. He had other people doing his stuff. It was very. I mean, in the beginning, he did his own stuff, but then as he got bigger, he became like a factory. And a lot of fine artists do that. Jeff Koons does that. If you ever watch Art 21, a lot of these huge artists aren't creating their own work. They have teams of artists.
Right.
You know, same thing with Shepard Fairey. Same thing. These guys, they make factories of artists producing their work.
Right.
And that seems art has been monetized and corporatized to the
Mm-hmm.
point where the individual artist is not going to make it unless you're willing to like sell your soul and
Yeah. At least not through their system. You have to,
right.
And there's something to be said that, putting your own personal experience, life experience, especially, into writing, is going to
Right.
produce something that has much more emotional impact. Because when you don't put that in, and you sort of have this, okay, well, this is the standard formula, and you do it, and okay, sure, it'll bring in a lot of cash, might be a movie that people rewatch because there's nothing else on TV, but it might not
Right.
create a cult following or something where it's like,
exactly.
man,
It's just
I love that movie.
It ends up one little thumbnail on Netflix among thousands, and they're all the same. But going back to your question about like being inspired, like passing it on, and I think it is helpful that we have like a support group or network of creativity and creators and stuff like that, and working together. Like I always stress, like the Women in Comics convention that I started and that Regina took over with the women is like, it's not about a convention. It's not about making money. It's about joining forces, making like an all-female comic company.
Right.
Women in Comics should be like a comic book company publishing and distributing independent female artists' work on a monthly basis.
Right.
But it's all about getting capital. It's all about and it's getting towards there. It's going towards that direction. Same thing with Bronx Heroes. I mean, that was the idea in the Bronx Heroes before. Like, just let's create an umbrella of independent owners. Like the Image Comics model, and help publish other artists, get other people out there.
Right.
In a sense, when I created the convention, I kind of, instead of doing a comic company, I did a convention, and people networked. It was a networking party.
Yeah, I attended your conventions.
That's right. So, I mean, to me, it was a networking party more than a convention, right? It was more like, it was small, it was intimate,
It was great. I met a lot of the guys that I still hang out, I don't hang out because I'm not there anymore, but I chit chat with Jerome Walford. He just is the
great guy.
Great guy. He has,
and that's the way I think it should be. And sometimes you can't always do the company because you don't have the capital, but to create a space where artists can be themselves. And I think Women in Comics is the same thing when I started.